Ben Vallis here with First to the Floor. Thank you for joining us. Hope you're doing well. Alongside me, Jake Eisenberg. Jake, how's it going, buddy?
Doing well. Just embracing my inner Joe Mazzulla and just hoping that the rest of the day goes badly so that I can face some adversity.
A mindset-focused approach. Love it. All right. Look, subscribe to the YouTube channel here. We're so close to 3,000 subs. Like the stream. Hit that like button. Also, you can scan this QR code on the screen to get all our socials, the audio podcast, and our new Discord server, which has quickly become a hotbed, a hive of Celtics scholars chopping it up, all things Celtics. All the links are in the description. We've got an awesome guest tonight, former Rain and Jay, current co-host of Still Poddable, which, by the way, has the best theme song in all of Celtics podcasts, and he writes about the Celtics for The Athletic. It's Jay King. Jay, welcome, man. How's it going?
It's going great. Our theme song is hilarious. Like, it makes me laugh every single time.
It's so good.
It's groovy, too. I can just imagine you guys just getting ready to go every time it pops on.
Every single time it makes me laugh, no matter what, and then gets stuck in my head forever.
Yeah, likewise. All right, well, look, let's start here. Jay, you had this tweet yesterday. The Celtics just completed a stretch of 15 games in 26 nights. They finished at 11-4 with a net rating of nearly 9. The schedule opens up a bit from here, thank God. Jay, how much can you even derive from these games? Given it was such a condensed period, it did at times feel like the Celtics, I don't want to say mailing it in, but we're just trying to get through these games. And yet, as an analyst, I can imagine you're trying to pull as much data as you can to figure out what this team will look like in the postseason. But given it's such a messy period of the schedule, how much can you even really derive from this stretch?
I thought it was a really impressive stretch. And what you derive from it, to me, more than how their offense looked, how their defense looked, is that they had the mindset to go 11-4 through a stretch that was that difficult. And to, for the most part, play pretty good basketball throughout it, and to end it with a back-to-back win against two pretty good teams. I just thought that the approach that they took, the unwillingness to kind of let themselves give away too many games in there. Now, of course, there was the Milwaukee mishap. There was the blowout loss to LA where they kind of just let go of the rope a little bit in the second half, I thought. But other than that, I just thought this team has taken a really good mindset into this year. It's not like last season when small ruts become, longer issues, bigger issues. They've just kind of kept everything to a minimum. And that to me is really impressive, especially in January. This was one of the tougher months I've probably ever covered from a standpoint of the travel, the sheer amount of games. Mm-hmm. And the Celtics, I really thought they handled it well, even though obviously it probably wasn't their best basketball. It was really an impressive approach when you take into account everything that went into that.
Yeah, dude. I mean, this is ridiculous, this stretch and the mentality of this team. I joked about, Mazzulla and expecting and hoping that my life goes badly for the next couple of days just so I can personally get better as a person. But yesterday was that's the Galaxy brain take. It was going to be too easy, up 20, and they decided to start shitting the bed with 60 seconds to go in the second quarter and let that carry into the next half. But that's just what's going to happen when you're playing this many games in the NBA. Like this stretch, 11-4, as you said. I know in that stretch they played 3 teams that were under 500, and technically when they played the Rockets were above 500. When they played them. So there was just no nights off. And then you get the 2 wins on a back-to-back without KP on one and without Horford last night. Porzingis talked about it last night in his presser. Joe's really big on the mindset stuff. And that's been a weakness of this team for a few years, and it definitely popped up a fair bit last year. I've said it before. I was hesitant early in this season to be this team is different. This team would have lost that game last year because this team last year won 57 games, which means they were fantastic. But we're definitely at a point where this team's definitely different. I think that last year maybe that third quarter run happens. The Pacers take the lead in the third quarter. They go up 1. And that lead turns into a 10, 12 point lead. And the Celtics have to kind of fight and then make it one of those close fake comeback games. Whereas how many times this year has a team kind of gone on a run? They take the punch and then they come back, they play solid, and if not for a backcourt violation by Drew Holiday in the last 90 seconds, it probably doesn't get Too stressful down the stretch there.
Yeah, and it's just minimizing the damage, right? Like they've only lost twice in a row, once all season. That's so hard to do in an NBA schedule. And last year, I can remember there was a stretch when they gave up like a 26-point lead against Brooklyn. I don't know if it was
Oh
exactly
man,
26.
yeah, it was
And
yeah.
then I think their next game they had like a 12-point lead against Cleveland, and that was the game Grant Williams missed the free throws. They ended up losing that. And it was just like, why do you let this snowball? How do you not come back after that, after blowing the huge lead, and take care of business the next time you have a huge lead? It just didn't make sense. And I thought that was starting to show flaws of that team, and it showed up again in the playoffs. Trae Young comes in game 5. They had a chance to close out the Hawks in game 5. They let Trae Young come back in that game. It extended the series. Philadelphia, Joel Embiid is out, and instead of just taking care of business, they let James Harden go absolutely bonkers, don't defend him well at all, eventually let him hit a game winner. And so it's just like they didn't always take care of business, and this team has been very businesslike.
Yeah, and yet they're not absolutely perfect. Like 31-6 in second chance points last night. Just talking about the indie game very quickly. They score 81 points in the first half, which is their most all season, like by a small enough margin. And yet they're only up 15 because on the rebounds, on the boards rather, they're absolutely shitting the bed. Do you see that as a problem going forward and into the playoffs as we start to try and nitpick like what might be their downfall if there is one?
Not really. They've actually been a great defensive rebounding team over the last couple of seasons, even though because of how small they play a lot of the time, you wouldn't expect it. But Jason Tatum's a great defensive rebounder. I think they led the league in defensive rebounding last year. Now they're in the top 10 again. So I don't see that as a huge, huge issue. To me, I don't want to say it's the potential downfall. The one thing about their starting lineup is that they don't have a big guy who's super physical.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that won't matter in most matchups. You can stick Drew Holiday on just about anyone and be fine. You can stick Jason Tatum on just about anyone and be fine. Jaylen Brown, but like there are two teams in the East that could matter against, and it's the Bucks with Giannis and the Sixers with Embiid. And just how do you match up with those guys in your starting lineup? And that's like the one potential flaw I see in this team. And the answer could be just play Al Horford more. But I think they kind of have to figure out, and maybe they've already figured it out, how they would approach such a matchup in a playoff series. But I don't think you can get away with like Drew Holiday on Joel Embiid,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe even Drew Holiday on Giannis for the length of a playoff series.
Yeah, I will say I have been more impressed with Kristaps's rebounding and physicality than I thought I was going to be. But yeah, like last night in particular, I don't know, coming back off the ankle injury, he definitely got out-muscled a fair bit by Turner and on the boards, despite having, I think he had 11 or 12 rebounds. I know that because he was part of my same game parlay. Thank you, Kristaps.
There you go.
There you go.
Shout out FanDuel.
Yeah, shout out FanDuel. Yeah, so like the defensive rebounding numbers are always have been excellent. Al Horford, yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth. I was like, he's kind of the answer to, I think, those things. And it's going to be interesting to see whether or not, especially those two matchups in particular, if we see a lot more Al Horford than if we play pretty much any other team. I think Al Horford probably slips into that role that he's playing right now in that 24, 26-minute range. But we know what he does against the Bucks and Joel Embiid. It's going to be very difficult to keep him off the court for 30 minutes in those matchups, I think.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And then the other potential issue, is just always late game offense. And I don't say that because of anything that has really happened this year. Like you can point to a couple different games where they didn't score well down the stretch. The loss in Minnesota was particularly disgusting. The last 5 minutes of the Nuggets game, they had 4 points. But for the most part, I feel like crunch time offense has been really good. They've been able to diagnose defenses. They've been able to find solutions. They've gone to a whole bunch of different ways to play, whether it's posting up with Jason Tatum, posting up with Kristaps Porzingis, running high screen roll with Derek White and whoever. And so the only reason why I think that could be an issue is just because of history. And we've seen it pop up deep in the playoffs the last couple of seasons. So they still need to prove, they need to beat those allegations, I guess. Those are like the two things I'm kind of monitoring as I look at things that could be the downfall on top of like the health stuff, which especially with Kristaps Porzingis seems really, really important.
Yeah. Keep him in bubble wrap. We're inching closer to not needing him to play very much as we have our 4.5 game lead on first place. But that's a great point. The offense, we've got a tweet from Steve Jones today that kind of made the rounds on Twitter. And there's very few guys nationally that I really take too much stock in when they talk about the Celtics or any specific team. Jay, I'm sure you struggle with this, like trying to do national stuff. I don't know how anyone can really do it across, like when there's so many games and there's so many teams. But Steve Jones in particular is a guy that I really believe in his like ball knowing abilities. I know Boston is very good. I still don't know how to deal with the combination of quick shots, bogging down and getting late in the clock, and the great ball movement / spacing. It's funny, he actually didn't really say anything very negative about the Celtics, but he copped a fair bit of Celtics fans are on edge this season.
Twitter is a nasty place.
I'm not sure if it's worse this year, but that always, and I've mentioned this on the pod before, this clip, which I went and found from the mic'd up segments in the conference finals from Eric Spoelstra. It always makes me think of this.
The possession game right now, right? All right, on both sides. So the offensive rebounding, and then make sure we get shots on goal. Okay, shots on goal.
The shots on goal thing, I think is like such a key thing for this Celtics team, and speaks to Joe Mazzulla's offensive philosophy. When you get quick shots, you're not going to turn the ball over. And this one of the reasons the Celtics haven't won the title, like maybe right at the top of the list, has been turnovers. When they made it to the finals, the Bucks series, the Heat series, and the Warriors series, Tatum broke the record for most turnovers in a playoff run ever, which is not super surprising because he played 3 elite defenses and he was 23 years old as a lead wing initiator, not even as a guard. But when you're turning the ball over, like you're giving up the opposition easy transition opportunities in a playoff setting where buckets are so hard to come by, like you just can't be giving away those types of shots. And so you're getting quick shots, which is shots on goal, and also now the infusion of the post-ups in this offense. They are now second in the league in post-up frequency, and that's like the biggest difference in this Celtics offense. And when you talk about fourth quarter offense, Jalen and Jason, like turnovers are just part of like one of their weaknesses in those late moments, especially just like when driving. But when you put them in those post-up situations, it really minimizes turnovers, and it makes it easier for them to play make out of those spots. Your thoughts, J. King?
Yeah, no, all of that makes perfect sense, and I think that's one of the reasons why they've leaned into more post-ups. And last year in Joe Mazzulla's first as a coach, that felt like one of the lessons that he learned was like he wanted to do, and it's funny now because they're so efficient with post-ups, but he wanted to do basically what would lead to the most efficient opportunities and to layups and to three-pointers. And he didn't really veer too far from that ever. And this year he was like, I think from playing against the Miami Heat, especially, that series helped teach him like, sometimes you just need a bucket. Sometimes it's not about getting, a corner three or a layup. It's like, can you get yourself into a position that you have a reasonably good chance of scoring? And post-ups for them have been really important for that. And I think it's one way to minimize runs by an opposing team. It's one way to control the pace of a game. And they have so many guys who can post up. Basically, their whole starting lineup can post up, and it helps a lot that they have nothing but shooters in most of their rotation. I mean, Luke Cornett is the only guy in their rotation who doesn't really shoot threes. He used to. Shout out to Luke Cornett's early career launching.
Self-control from that guy, dude. That's so impressive. He just doesn't even think about it anymore.
But yeah, that's been a huge evolution for the post-ups, and they're so good at it. And they're smart about when they do it too. And I think that's been part of it, is like Kristaps Porzingis, you hardly ever see him ever post up an opposing center. It's almost always opposing wings. It's almost always a mismatch. Jason Tatum, like he picks and chooses when he goes in there. They pick and choose when they send him there. And I just feel like like they've done a really smart job of attacking the post at the right times. And it's been a huge change for them. Like they never ever went to that last year, and now, like you said, they're second behind, I think, Jokic's Nuggets.
Yeah. It's Denver is number one. Yeah, so both possessions and frequency, they're second. And then efficiency, they're right at the top.
Yeah, Jay, from being around the team as much as you are, how much of a sense do you get that the addition of like Charles Lee and Sam Cassell are the catalyst for these changes? Like, obviously, Joe's been really impressive this year, I think, on the court and off the court. Like, for nothing else, for no other purpose, you could say that he's been really entertaining with the media, I think, if not a little bit abrasive at times. But particularly on the court, like, how much do you think the addition of his new assistant coaches have been the catalyst for some of these changes?
So I don't know. Sam loves the post ups. Obviously, he was a post up guy, and he works with Jason Tatum on those. I don't know how much of this is due to Charles Lee, but you can sort of see the Bucks' influence on the defense, especially. The Celtics give up a ton of 3-point attempts, and I think they're last in the first in the league. They allow the most above the break 3-point attempts, I believe, or at least last time I checked, they were, and that's by design. They're sort of taking the Bucks philosophy of, yeah, we're going to allow you to shoot a lot of threes, but we're going to make your worst shooters take them, and the trade-off is we're going to be insane at protecting the rim. And Porzingis has allowed them to kind of form their defense like that, and then they have just rim protection everywhere. Like, literally, what other starting lineup has two guards who can both protect the rim? It's just so rare. But the Celtics have that, and so I don't know exactly how much obviously is due to those guys, but you can see the influence. And then I think maybe the bigger influence is like Joe's not working with a staff that was Ime Udoka's.
Yeah, sure.
and he had time to sort of recalibrate how the flow of information goes, recalibrate how the daily processes go. And I think that's gone a long way toward making a difference and allowing Joe to be more comfortable. He's running things the way he wants to now, in a way that he was never afforded during his first year, just because of how strange that whole thing was.
I kind of have this theory with Udoka that he helped, like the Jays, for example, get over the line from a maturity standpoint, help them grow up to some degree. Yeah, and but also gave them readiness for the Mazzulla era. Like, I think if you just went straight to Mazzulla, maybe they'd still be not badasses, for lack of a better term. Is that fair?
I don't know. So Mazzulla is a badass. Like he
in his own way.
He's a maniac, competitive maniac. So I don't know if that's fair, but I do know that those guys give Ime Udoka a lot of credit for just kind of turning around the direction of the franchise. I mean, I don't want to say dark, but it was a bad season before he got there. And then the first half of that season was really bad. And they kind of had to learn how to see the game differently. And I think that's been a process for Tatum and Brown throughout their entire careers. It's still ongoing now. But especially then, it was like those guys have always been open to coaching, but I think they just needed to learn how to see the game better. They needed to learn how to impact their teammates. And I thought that was the biggest thing Udoka brought. And that was the biggest change during his years. Like, those guys started to realize how much value they could have on top of their scoring. And now obviously you see it, and they're just all around players now, including Brown, who's probably playmaking at a level that he never has before.
Yeah, they just needed a year abroad. Instead of like me taking a gap year and going to Asia and drinking a lot of weird stuff in buckets, they went to like badass like bully ball camp for a year. But then, I don't know if this is a hot take, but Damon Stoudemire yesterday, huge W against UNC. Will Hardy climbing the leaderboard and coach of the year. Joe Mazzulla doing his thing. Rockets struggling. I don't know. Maybe you think.
What are you saying?
I don't know. I'm just laying out facts. But yes, you mentioned Derek White and rim protection, and before I ask you the next question, I just want to talk about this play from Derek White, just because we didn't hit the Pacers game too much here, but firstly, Derek White, first quarter, just ridiculous, 9 shots. I wonder if that had a little bit to do with just how good he was in the fourth quarter and Tatum being like, hey, we need you to be aggressive. When you're aggressive, this team is really good. But watch Derek White in particular, like from start to finish on this play.
It's him hard. Holiday's on him. He'll make a move. The bump, the feed in the corner. Oh, what a play! What a rejection in there by White!
Dude. Okay, I've got it in slow-mo too, but we can talk over this one. This guy's a ninja. Like, he feels the screen and instantly just does a ninja spin and books it for the corner. Like, the defensive instincts of Derek White are insane, and everybody knows I love Derek White, and so I just needed to make sure we snuck this one in here.
Yeah, that was a heck of a play. And they needed it too after
Yeah.
allowing their lead to just bleed away for the last couple of minutes of that game.
Yeah, so on that, trust is a word I would definitely use when it comes to Derek White. And to borrow a little gimmick or tradition, I should say, from the Still Poddable podcast, can I interest you in a 6-pack of trust rankings? Using
yeah.
We go.
Back on the road. I love it.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah. So we'll use the top 6 as the 6-pack as far as who do you trust the most? I mean, Jay, I guess, as one of the inventors of the 6-pack and our guest, I suppose I'll give you the first pick here. Who do you take first overall?
So how are we gauging trust here?
man.
Just any value, any definition?
Leave it up to you.
Holistically.
listen to your-
it could be at the free throw line. It could be bringing the ball up. It could be initiating the offense, anchoring the defense, or all of the above.
Listen to your heart.
Let's go with. I'll go with Derek White. From a play-to-play standpoint, nobody makes more right decisions.
Mm-hmm.
Joe Mazzulla called him a genius player yesterday, and
Accurate.
It's really true, and I think he's just always a step ahead at making the right decision. Like, he doesn't just make it; he makes it more quickly than other people do. And you can always trust him to make the right read in a pick and roll. You can always trust him to make the right read on whether to pass or shoot. You can always trust him to fly around screens and pursue a play and contest shots at the rim or anywhere else. And how many dumb plays does Derek White make? Not very many. So we'll go with Derek White in the trust. The only thing that kept me from that was the final series he had 2 years ago, which I don't think really applies anymore because he's a totally different player.
Yep.
And the one stretch of game 3 against Miami where they kind of played him off the court and they went with Grant Williams instead. So that's the only things that kept him from being a unanimous pick in my head, but he's still the pick.
Yeah, he didn't stand out particularly well in that Philly series last year either, I thought, but probably nitpicking because we expect perfection from Derek White always, so I'll leave that point there. Do I get the second pick, Jake? Am I jumping the gun here?
Mate, no, jump in there, big dog.
All right, I mean, it's got to be Jason Tatum, right? And, I have to eliminate the free throw line from, part of how I incorporate, this into his trust rankings because he has not proven himself to be particularly reliable at the free throw line, although there is upticking over the last couple of weeks or so, thankfully, both in frequency and accuracy. But Jason Tatum, I mean, come on. How can he not be ranked second in the trust rankings? This is the guy who we want the ball in his hands to close the majority of games. Although, like you've just done, Jay, you can make the argument, and rightfully so, make the argument for Derek White also having the ball in his hands at the end of the game. But it's Jason Tatum. He's got the reputation. He's proven himself to be trustworthy for the most part, time and time again, since he was drafted.
Yeah, and I think an underrated part of the trust is if I need one stop, as much as I love Derek White and Drew Holiday, if we end up playing Miami, can we just I want Jason Tatum on Jimmy Butler from as the primary matchup from the get-go. Halliburton, SGA, there's very few guys in the league that if you need one stop, 5 minutes to go, that's the guy I want purely just from size, foot speed combination. He's so good. And not to say that Derek White number one's a bad pick. There is that there's that confidence piece. the JJ Redick podcast, The Curse. He's not quite Jason Tatum in the sense it's like Jason Tatum is 100% sure that the next shot that he takes is going in, and that's just how he lives his life. And
Are you saying he's uncursable? You cannot be cursed?
I think that's a good call. Yeah, he's uncursable.
We got to be careful. We might curse him
Whoa.
in the process of declaring that.
Yeah. Well, let's move on to another uncursable individual. This is great value at number 3 here, Al Horford. I can't believe he's fallen to me in this spot. I mean, what do you need? Al Horford's got you. Is it guard Joel Embiid, Giannis? Do you need him to still switch onto a guard? The fact that he's still this Swiss Army knife dude.
It's insane.
I've given up trying to figure out when it's gonna fall off. I was listening to like Thinking Basketball and their like old guys pod, and they're like, he's just an outlier at this point, same as LeBron. What are you gonna say, Jay?
Yeah, no, it's insane because the league has gotten to the place where centers are more and more like played out of rotations or in a series, like just played off the floor. It never happens to Al Horford because he can guard anybody. And the fact that he's still doing that at age 37 is just nuts. And obviously he's declined in some ways. He doesn't really shoot 2-pointers anymore. He certainly never gets to the free throw line. Like there are ways that you can see his athleticism show up, but defensively it feels like there's been no slippage at all. And it's been nice that they've kind of been able to limit his minutes a little bit this year, but then Kristaps is out and he goes for 36 minutes and is totally capable of doing that. So I don't think they should do that very often.
Yeah.
Keep Allen bubble wrap too.
Yes.
They're going to need him in the playoffs, but man, he's dependable and has been dependable for a long time. And it's just bonkers that he's still at this level at 37.
Yeah, go ahead, Ben.
Oh, I've really got nothing to add. That you guys nailed it. I was just going to say he's a B plus, like in all attributes, right? Which is an amazing luxury to have for anyone aged 37. And you know, I'm about to turn 37 myself. I can safely say I'm a C minus in all attributes in life.
Yeah, facts, dude. I'm much younger and C minus would be great.
Thanks for pointing that out.
in all aspects. But yeah, dude, like I wonder if it's a little bit to do with the role. Like I feel like he's better this year defensively than he was last year. But that was because he played 31 minutes a game last season. This season he's in that 24 to 26 range, being very careful with the back-to-backs. And then last time I checked, he was shooting 50% from 3 in the clutch this season. Like I just trust this guy to make big shots on the catch every game. The playoffs last year is a massive outlier in my opinion. I think it was just shooting variance that hit the Celtics at the wrong time. I looked at the 9 years of Al Horford's playoff shooting, and he averages like 35, 36 across that entire sample. The next lowest was like 34, 35%. That 28% in the playoffs was just came right at the wrong time.
And they don't rely on that as much anymore, right?
Yes.
Like last year, they needed him to shoot well to space the court for everybody else. Now it's a bonus more so than a necessity because it's Kristaps who's going to space the court, and it's Kristaps who's going to provide all of that for the starting unit. So to me, every point he scores is a bonus because his defense is just still at such a high level.
He should be higher on the 6 Man of the Year rankings. Ben, go ahead, but Jay, you're up next.
Those are stupid. It's not about who's actually good at basketball. It's
I know.
about who scores the most points.
Well, I was going to ask Jake, are we doing a snake draft or are we doing a traditional draft?
Actually don't know.
Back to Jay.
We always do the
Jay's
snake
our
draft
guest.
on Still Poddable.
Okay,
yeah.
well,
we always
got to
do the snake
remain.
draft.
So
We've gotta
technically,
remain
I
true
get
to
another
that.
pick here. Oh,
Yeah,
interesting.
okay. Damn.
Okay, I was looking down the draft board. It's right. I can make a quick trade up here. So who we got left? Yeah, it's KP. I think next here. I also just think his job. It's easy to trust him. I think like it's just every open shot you get, take it. Anytime you have a mismatch, you're getting the ball. Drop coverage, protect the rim. The only weakness I think he has right now is his ability to cover stretch bigs. I thought he did a better job yesterday against Turner, but Chet struggled a fair bit in that matchup. That's just how that's true of every big, really. It's like, and that's why stretch big's just so freaking valuable in the NBA because it's just
Also,
it's
why
rare.
Al Horford is so valuable, because he doesn't get caught in that somehow.
There you go. See, again, great value at number 3. Al Horford,
Yeah,
making
huge.
my case for me.
Yeah.
KP, man, I just don't ever feel like he makes the wrong decision, but I also feel like his decision profile is kind of easier to manage for him because we just want him to be this elite offensive release valve, and that's what he's been doing.
I've called KP an adventurous pass attempter in the past. We saw it last night against Indy, where he
That
just
was bad.
bounced the ball right out of bounds. He gets a little bit too speculative with the angles on his passes for JB.
Okay.
There, it's good that they're trying to keep the cookies and cream thing alive, trying to reignite that connection on a game by game basis. But I think he just gets a little bit too try hard with some of those attempts. But definitely, I think a worthy spot in the draft as far as trust rankings. Anything to add there on KPJ before we move on?
He also just makes everything so easy for everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's somehow a connective piece with the traits of a star. Like he has all the skill of a star. He's 7'3". The step back he hit against Miles Turner was just outrageous for a guy his size to do, and he does stuff like that regularly. But it's like the things that he does, whether it's spacing up, he's a really good roller too. Like he just does a little bit of everything in a way that really connects the offense and allows everybody else to flourish. He doesn't really care about his shot attempts. Sometimes I think they'd be better if they got him more shot attempts, but that hasn't really been how they flow a lot of the time. But to me, like, he's been ridiculous, and he's unlocked things that they never could do before. And I just think he's made a world of difference for them. And I think that's one reason to believe that their late game offense will not have all the same issues that they've had in the past.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. So the next pick is tough. It's pretty slim pickings down here at the bottom. I've got to go with Jaylen Brown, which
Thank
is
God, dude.
tough. And historically, like if you were to make that pick a year ago, you'd be like, what are you talking about? But Jaylen Brown, he has had an uptick in playmaking efficiency. It seems like he's really come alive. That part of his brain has become activated, and he's actually making some pretty smart plays off the dribble, making some good kick-out passes. We saw examples of that last night against Indy. It's still a surprise every time he makes the right play, when he keeps his head up and makes the right play off the dribble. I'm still not used to it. I don't know if I will get used to it. But as far as trust rankings, like he's just elevated himself there above the quality of a guy like Drew Holiday, I think. So Jalen's my pick.
He's climbed way up the trust rankings.
Yes, since
way
game
up
7.
this year.
Was he like 15th
Yeah.
man before?
Yeah. And you know what? I think that informed him that he needed to change. Before, it was like he was always on the rise, right? It was he became an all-star. He became an all-NBA player. Like, just he kept scoring more and more points. And then it was like, oh, I'm not good enough.
Yeah.
Jason Tatum got hurt. I was in charge of the offense, and it didn't work. And so I think this year he really came in with the mentality that I need to be better, and he's done it. The way that he's improved, just his willingness as a passer, getting into the paint and not taking too many dribbles and going into a crowd and trying some nonsense, just making safe plays time after time. It's really impressive to see, because I genuinely didn't think he would get to this place in his career. I thought he was at the stage where it was just like, Jalen's going to be a great scorer, and that's pretty much it. But now he's running pick and rolls, and you can allow him to do that when Jason Tatum sits. The offense is often in Jaylen Brown's hands, and it works. And they've made it work, and he's made it work. So I've been really impressed by him this year. I know the stats, like his efficiency is right about where it was last season. The assists aren't way up. The turnovers are down, but not by like a ton. Although lately he's really taking great care of the ball. But it's just like watching him play, it's totally different.
Yeah, it almost felt like it was just a simple mentality shift. It's like, when I'm driving, I just need to be more aware of like passing being an option and a good option. Like the amount of times he's driven and jumped in the air with no plan just like doesn't really happen anymore. Whereas that was like every game last year. And so just like keeping that dribble alive and looking for guys has made such a big impact. And then like the defensive impact of this guy. Like as good as Drew and Derek are, like instinct-wise compared to Jalen, there's just like something you can't make up for when you're 6'6", 6'7", and as strong and as long as Jalen is. And man, like I didn't think he was almost even like capable of playing the level of defense that he has this year. Like not getting back to a cut ever now. It's had a huge impact on the Celtics and really encourages me for the playoffs. But
and then his recognition of defenses has just really grown. Like there's one play in the Pacers game where he drove baseline, and they rotated to the opposite corner, and he threw like the pass to the opposite wing instead.
Yeah,
and it was like, oh, okay, he's seeing a step ahead now, and that didn't used to be the case. He was seeing it a step behind, and he kind of jumped ahead of like seeing it where you're supposed to. Like he's a step ahead now. Sometimes he's been really good.
Still never not surprising. Jay, that only leaves one person falling to you with the last pick.
Does it?
Or
am I going to get real crazy here?
Oh, okay.
Or am I going to get real crazy here?
Let's hear it.
I thought about shocking the world and picking Peyton Pritchard, who's near the top of the league in assist to turnover ratio, but we're going to go with Drew Holiday instead. And you can just trust in his competitive fabric. You can trust him to guard whoever you want. You can trust that he will never moan, bitch about anything. He's gotta be one of the best teammates in the league. I know he's won the Team of the Year award like 3 times, and it's deserved. This guy won All-Star last year and just came into Boston. It's like, yeah, I'm cool with being the 5th option. The 5th option.
Yeah.
and so to be able to trust that, sometimes he's not going to get the ball for long stretches. Sometimes, and you can always count on him still to compete at a super high level, to never complain. That's so meaningful to the team, and I think just his mentality toward that has gone a long way toward establishing that sort of attitude from the entire Celtics team. If you look at Drew Holiday, who was an All-Star last year, and see him sacrificing the way he has, like, you don't have a lot to complain about if you're one of those other guys.
But there is a reason that he is 6th.
Yes, go on.
He does some wild stuff.
There is a reason that he's 6th. And last night was like the example. The game was over. You're up 7 with like minute 42 to go. All you need to do is like take a shot with 3 or 5 seconds left on the shot clock and the game's over. Instead, he goes Drew Holiday mode, tries to go behind the back. It was either an 8-second or a backcourt violation. The ref could have really chosen whatever he wanted, and he could have called it. There was the first possession of the Miami game. I'm never going to forget it. The backcourt violation.
That was like, incredible.
I'm like,
never seen that before.
This is Miami. I'm like, oh great, here we fucking go, dude. Like, the devil magic has infected our new recruit instantly as well. He just. I'm pretty close to the point where I'm able to accept the pull-up threes that just come out of complete thin air because they go in. And so I'm getting better.
There seems to be no pattern about when he decides to pull up either. It's
I can't figure.
Just totally. It's not how that he's being defended, because a lot of the time when he pulls up is when he's most defended.
Yeah. I don't get it. And then there's the Bucks fans in the back of my head, chirping about the Drew Holiday stuff. I'm not super worried about that because, as you said, 5th option, his ability to be destructive is just really mitigated just because of his role and the talent on the team. But there's just he does some stuff where I'm like,
it's so funny because at the end of the day, you look at his stats. He doesn't turn the ball over a lot. He's
got a friend on the stat sheet somewhere, dude.
His efficiency is sparkling, but every decision that he makes that's bad is so bad. It's just they're memorable mistakes. He makes the most memorable mistakes of anybody, except maybe Nimi. Nimi makes some memorable mistakes as well.
Some very memorable jump ball situations last night, which were hilarious. And I think we've already got clipped and going up on our socials later today. This question came from someone in our Discord. Would you hypothetically rank last year's Marcus Smart over Drew in this year's trust rankings, given the opportunity, Jay?
Ooh.
Love and trust, after all, right?
So to me, they're so close. They're so close. I think you have to trust Holiday a little more just because he's a better shooter, right? Like, and that's going to matter in the playoffs. That's going to matter. He's 50-something% from corner threes, and it just seems like anytime he gets the ball there, it's going into the basket. Defensively, I feel like Drew has maybe even done a better job than Smart on the ball, but Smart was so good off the ball, like just a ridiculous force off the ball. They're similar players but different, and the Celtics. I don't know what the Celtics would look like if they hadn't picked up Drew Holiday. Like, I know they would have been really good regardless, but he kind of completed them to me. They needed a guy like Marcus Smart after losing Marcus Smart, and they got the only guy who might be more Marcus Smart than Marcus Smart.
Yeah, very fortunate. Anything else, Jake, before we move on and wrap up with some trade talk?
No, I think it's fair. It's a tough choice, but yeah, purely the shooting alone, I think just in the playoffs in particular, the way that teams guard Drew is just going to be completely different to the way that teams guard Marcus Smart. And that's because, as we're seeing, Marcus Smart has never touched the level of like shooting that Drew Holiday has done over the past. Like the sample size now of Drew being a 40% three-point shooter goes back 3+ seasons. This would be the 4th season. And like you're seeing what happens in this role from the corners, which just was never going to be true of Marcus. So yeah, I think that's where you give the edge to Drew there. But all right, we'll move on. Thank you for indulging us in the first of the 4 6-pack.
Loved it.
Thanks for loaning us the segment. Thank you.
Yeah.
I stole it from somebody.
Okay, great. Now we feel less bad.
And renamed it.
All right, so trade deadline. A couple. What are we at? 7-8 days away now. The Jayshawn Tate report came out today. I guess the first question is, do you think the Celtics will make a move? If yes, tier 1 move, like 15+ million, like a real like trade a top 6 guy swing, or a tier 2, someone in that 6 to 12 million, or just like a Conchar type move. I guess Jayshawn Tate probably falls into that tier 3 bucket as well.
I would guess probably tier 3. I think they will not move any of the top 6. Like that's just not happening. They're really confident about the way they've played so far, as they should be. They are really confident with the way things have gone, and they don't want to ruin that. And on top of that, if you're going to keep your top 6, which they are, then you don't really have a lot of options financially to go after to take a big swing at somebody. And Brad Stevens has said he wants to get a big wing. I do think they'll do something just to add another option. But I think it'll be more like a Mike Muscala edition where, you bring him in, hopefully he helps. Muscala didn't really help much, but you bring in somebody that's going to be a good locker room guy, won't care if he's not in the rotation, but also might give you something else on the court. And that to me is what they'll probably end up with. They could have like bigger ambitions of going after, like if Caruso was available, I'm sure they'd be super interested, though I'm not sure he's going to be available, and I'm not sure they would have enough to get him if he was available. But short of that, there's not a lot of options that the Celtics will have just financially to go after.
Yeah, I think it's got to be with using the TPE, right? Because otherwise you are sending out some notable personnel, even if it is Peyton Pritchard. And he, for us on this show, has been the name that's come up quite a bit, just because typically, without the TPE, or even with, you do have to send out some value. And he might be, not to speculate too wildly here, that, the most movable piece with some value that you could send out. And then, we saw it with the Heat, even though we blew them the fuck out. Like, Jimmy Butler comes in and expertly goes at Peyton Pritchard at every single opportunity, and that's just going to be repeated time and time again in the playoffs. So is that a position, Jay, that you think most needs to be upgraded, the sort of the backup guard position? Or do you think that's likely to happen?
To me, no, you don't need another backup guard, because basically all your minutes in the playoffs, at least deep in the playoffs, are going to go top 6, maybe a 7th. And if Peyton Pritchard, if it's not the matchup for him, you just play all those other guys 35 to 40 minutes, maybe give Sam Hauser some minutes. So to me, I would just want another wing, because right now Sam Hauser is the only backup wing they have who's really earned trust. And Brissett, you can talk about whether he's kind of emerged as that lately too. But I would want just another guy in that mold. I think Cornette's done enough where they should feel comfortable with him. If they're healthy, I don't think they play a third big in the playoffs anyway. So I would just want like one more wing option just in case.
Yeah, my guy is Fontecchio. I'm not sure if the Jazz are gonna be sellers or not. What's going on with Danny Ainge? And I know like the prevailing theory on Danny Ainge is like he's gonna make us give up like way too much for Fontecchio. But you go back and you have a look at that Russell Westbrook trade, which is like kind of underrated, was a very bad deal by the like Jazz as far as value goes. Like they just gave up a lot and didn't really get back much in my opinion. So I wonder where Danny is on that and just where the Jazz are. It's a very weird situation. Like they have their picks top 10 protected, but it's a bad draft. You don't know with Danny, like which direction he might go. I know a lot of people want KP and Horford insurance. I'm a huge believer in Cornette as far as like third bigs go. I just don't believe that KP Horford insurance exists. Like you're just not going to get it. Like Drummond is a name that always comes up. Tice would have been like the guy, but he's not available. Like Nick Richards is a guy that comes up. Like there's just not it doesn't exist in my opinion. Tillman. There we go. That's close-ish, but like I don't know.
Tillman defensively is really good. Offensively, not so much. But yeah, to me, like with those guys, you just gotta pray. Luke Cornette has been a good backup big. You're really not gonna upgrade very much on without paying a bigger price than the Celtics will be willing and able to pay. I'm with you. Like you just hope you manage those guys well enough. You hope they're fortunate enough to stay healthy throughout the playoff run, and that if they do miss a game or two, that you're able to overcome it. And then, but yeah, like the thing about great bigs is like there's not a ton of great like totally difference making bigs in the league. Celtics have Porzingis to do that, and then Al, who's as good defensively probably as any backup big. I'm trying to think of another backup big who's that good.
Well, it's like Hartenstein and Mitchell Robinson's really the only.
Yeah, Hartenstein's been awesome.
Yeah,
Okongwu too. Yeah, I guess there are some, but maybe he's like the
Horford's better than those guys in my opinion. Like, but they're in the conversation.
Yeah.
So it's gonna be so difficult. Ben, go ahead.
I was going to say, speaking of staying healthy and heading into the playoffs, what do you think of this whole Sixers Embiid situation, Jay? It's a sort of a controversial topic, I suppose, with the whole 65-game limit and one's eligibility to make All-NBA teams and MVP and things like that. For me, it feels like the one thing that Joel Embiid is yet to achieve is a championship, or even still getting beyond the second round of the playoffs. So I think he should be ducking this 65-game situation, and I think the franchise should be behind him here and prioritizing health. And yet he goes out against the Warriors last night, clearly hobbled, makes matters worse. Then, he has the tough luck of Jonathan Kuminga falling on his leg, and we're yet to hear the reports of exactly the extent of that injury. But I'm just curious to hear your thoughts on how the Sixers and Embiid have approached that whole messy situation.
So I don't think they were ever concerned with the 65 games. He's missed enough games that he's well on pace to play fewer than 65 games. And he's been on that pace for a while now. They have not gone out of their way to put him back in the lineup. They have not gone out of the way to keep him, away from missing games. So to me, he played because he wanted to play. He felt he was capable of playing. It was really unfortunate. But I don't think the 65-game rule had a lot to do with that. And I don't think 65 games is a lot to ask an MVP to play. Like 60, that should be the minimum. Where I find an issue with it is when the money's affected. And that's with a guy like Tyrese Halliburton, who like to make all NBA now, you have to play 65 games. And he had an injury, clearly tried to come back quickly from injury because of that 65 game limit. And because there's 40, $50 million, whatever it is on the line based on whether he makes all NBA this season. And so that to me is where the rule is dicey, not with the MVP stuff. But when a guy's contract is determined by whether he plays 65 games and enough to qualify for all NBA, that's where it's tough. And I get it. Like 65 games, like I said, it's not a ton to play. But in situations where you're trying to rush back from an injury so that you get there, like that's not good at all. So maybe they need to come up with some other way of the, like, maybe if you miss like 20 games in a row or 15 games in a row, it only counts as whatever for the missed games portion or something like that. I don't know.
That's a good idea. Yeah, I think the All NBA, you just lower that, like MVP or whatever can be 65. Ironically, like an MVP that's played less than 65 has never won MVP except for Bill Walton, I think. So it's like that was already kind of taken into consideration. Maybe you lower All NBA to like 50 games or whatever because of the contract stuff. I'm also not too upset that Halliburton will make $215 million as opposed to $280 million. I think he'll be okay, whatever it is, either way. But I get that would be frustrating for the Embiid thing and the Sixers thing. It feels like they got bullied and Embiid got bullied into playing because of the Jokic ducking stuff.
But
that's what it looks like to me because he was clearly injured when he started playing yesterday, even if it's a different injury.
Mm-hmm. But to me, he already missed that game. Like whatever he did last night was not going to change that. And I don't know.
So why did he play though? You saw it, dude. He was like could barely move when he got out there.
Yeah, he didn't look great at all. And it'd be really unfortunate if it's a serious injury. I hope he's fine. But yeah, that was just tough.
So like everybody's mad. Sixers people are mad at all the people for calling out Joel Embiid's character, which absolutely fair because it got really nasty after the Nuggets thing. But like you got to, I think, point the finger back at the Philly training staff for not having him on the injury report, like opening up Embiid to the criticism to pull out 15 minutes before the game. Like, and it's just it's so Sixers to me, dude. Like, how do they screw like simple stuff like this up? Like for the last 5 years, it's just dude, be normal with this kind of thing. Dude. Just be like, he's fucking injured. He's going to miss the next 3 games. He clearly should be missing more. So, like, badly mismanaged, and now everybody's upset. Go ahead, Ben.
Yeah, well, it's just unsurprising coming from that particular franchise. Then we'll stop there. We won't shit on them any further. But Woj is actually tweeting about it now. He just tweeted out 7 minutes ago. Sixers star Joel Embiid is out for Thursday's game versus Utah and will receive further evaluation on his left knee in the next 24 hours. Embiid is expected to travel back to Philly and not join the team in Utah. So kind of a vague update, but so things are still up in the air there. Look, Jay, let's wrap up on this. I'd be fucking freaking out if I was a Sixers fan, but also this is like an annual tradition, right? Of just Embiid, having the same injury time and time again. But obviously we don't wish injuries upon anyone, even our worst enemies. So, best of health to Embiid and hopefully he's okay. Now, upcoming schedule. The Lakers, they're rolling into town tomorrow, Jay. They're pretty terrible right now. I think it's fair to say. Will that matter though, when LeBron James and Anthony Davis roll into Boston with this whole Celtics-Lakers narrative and they're trying to pick themselves back up off the ground? LeBron's tweeting out vague emojis, mysterious emojis of the hourglass, whatever that could indicate. So do you think despite the Lakers' poor performance to date, will that matter at all when it comes to LeBron and AD on the court in Boston tomorrow night?
No, I'm looking forward to that one. The level of it's just such a show when the Celtics and Lakers play each other. It doesn't matter even when the Lakers are bad and they're not that bad. Like, and LeBron and AD have both played at a really high level, and that team is capable of reaching a really high level on any given night. As LeBron said, I think it was last night. He was like, "Yeah, we can beat anybody. We can also get our ass kicked by anybody." But it should be a crazy night at the Garden. It's also like there aren't too many matchups between LeBron and the Celtics left, and LeBron versus the Celtics has been a huge rivalry for more than a decade now. Since I mean, '08 was the first epic series between the Cavs, or between LeBron and the Celtics.
Mm-hmm.
He had a ton of history with that big three of the Celtics. And now 16 years later, for him to still be playing at the level is just insane. But I think people should cherish like whatever games left LeBron has against the Celtics, because historically that's been one of the teams that he's had the biggest link to, both good and bad, for his career.
Oh yeah, they're going to be up for it. The Celtics, like, he's got to get through this game, and then they got a nice little stretch coming up. The good news is the Celtics going to be up for it too. National game, Lakers, LeBron, like as you said, Jay, like this. I mean, last year's Lakers Celtics game, we got the foul that didn't get called by Tatum on LeBron,
That was
which
epic.
led to
Patrick Beverly,
That's
legend.
an old timer.
Yeah, so which I still see like all the time on Twitter. It's like no fan base is better at keeping something like that alive for one game they lost. Whereas I haven't seen Celtics fans bring up the Jalen foul on the Pacers. But yeah, this game's going to be awesome between LeBron, and I know these guys are going to be up for it. Injury report mostly clean outside of Cornet, so going to be good to go. But the most important question, one question before we leave: can we look forward to Jay King versus Bobby Manning round 2, maybe in Vegas Summer League, halftime entertainment potentially after Jordan Walsh is going off for a 20-point triple-double, something like that?
Bobby should never want that again.
Here he's working on his game.
Yeah.
Is that still on YouTube?
Yes.
Yeah, because that's why it's
hilarious.
reemerged. Like, it came up on the Garden Report recently. So it's like there was a comment here earlier in the chat. Here we go. Jay King versus Bobby Manning, the sequel. And they showed it to Bobby, and he's like, I'm a lot better than I was back then. So here we go.
Oh, man. We got the
Just fast
video.
forward a little bit here. Here we go.
Look at that.
All right, game time. We won't watch the whole thing, but I mean, I just want to see Bobby try and post you up again. It's
I like
hilarious.
the headband and the sweatband. Little homage here.
Yeah.
Now, this is a good move. Little jab step, get him off balance, and a little fadeaway there.
yeah.
Very Jalen
Oh,
Brown-esque, you might say.
It was a good start. It was an
honestly-
ugly game, as I recall. It was not pretty basketball.
I'm not surprised that it's not. It wasn't, but yeah.
But his was far uglier than mine. I mean,
Here's the highlight.
look at him dribble. Like,
I know.
what are
Look, so why are you such
He's
a bully?
backing you
Why-
down. He's
why-
backing you
why
down. I
did-
love it.
Why did you agree to this game? Have you always been a bully?
Yes. No, he asked me if I wanted to do it, and then I didn't know it was gonna. I don't think I knew it was gonna be filmed or anything, and he showed up, and he filmed it. And I don't know why he filmed it
And posted it.
I don't know why he posted it. I don't know why he hasn't deleted it since then. It was not the most competitive game.
Well, I hear he's put on 12 pounds of muscle since that game.
I've put on like 30 pounds of fat. So.
Hey, that's probably more effective, honestly, in
Yeah.
this context of a 1v1 match. So
Yep. The Charles Barkley method. All right. You can find Jay King at @ByJKing on Twitter. You can find all his stuff over at The Athletic. And, of course, the Still Poddable podcast, the best theme song in the industry. Subscribe to their Patreon and catch their weekly free episode here on the CLNS network. Jay, this was awesome, man. Thanks so much for joining us. Anything you want to plug before we go?
You can find me at The Athletic. You can find me on Still Poddable and on Twitter, wherever else. Just find me, or don't find me, whatever you prefer.
Nice.
find him. He's all right.
Please do.
Yeah.
And thank you so much for coming on, Jay. This was great. Look, we're going to go live on playback for the Lakers game tomorrow. That's playback.tv/CelticsBlog. And then afterwards, another edition of Celtics Late Night. See you there. Jake, love your work, mate. Until next time, go Celtics.
I love the Celtics!